So it's been 2 weeks since the war between the US, Israel, and Iran kicked off. And if you're trying to follow what's going on, you're probably seeing two completely different stories, right? On one hand, you hear about a swift, decisive victory. On the other, a story of total human catastrophe. So what is actually happening on the ground? Well, let's try to break it all down.
Okay, so from the White House, the message could not be clearer. Total success. On March 13th, you have President Trump declaring the whole thing is basically over. I mean, it's the classic victory speech, right? It's designed to project strength, control, to say mission accomplished. But, as you're about to see, that story clashes dramatically with the facts on the ground. Because on that exact same day, the United Nations comes out with just one number, and it's devastating: 3.2 million. That's their estimate for how many Iranians have been forced from their homes, now refugees inside their own country. And that is the other side of the story. Understanding the huge gap between that official victory narrative and this human reality, well, that's the key to understanding this entire conflict.
All right, so let's start with the heart of the military operation itself, the air campaign over Iran. Now, the goal here, it isn't just to blow up tanks and missile sites. No, it's actually way more ambitious than that. The real goal is to cripple the regime's very ability to govern its own country.
And they're doing it with this three-step approach. First, you hit the internal security forces, the ones who keep the regime's grip on the population. Second, you take out the defense industry so they can't build new weapons. And third, you eliminate their air defenses, which basically gives you total control of the skies. You see how it works? Every single piece is designed to make the regime crumble from the inside out.
And we don't have to guess what the political goal is here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it pretty bluntly. This isn't just about winning a battle. The clear, stated goal is regime change, creating the conditions where the government can be, in his words, toppled from the inside.
So how's it going? Well, according to Western intelligence, the impact has been absolutely enormous. They estimate that in just 2 weeks, something like 80% of Iran's entire offensive capability has been wiped out. Just think about that for a second. 4/5 of their power to launch an attack just gone in 14 days.
But, and here's that contradiction again, officials are saying Iran's missile production is functionally defeated. And yet, missiles and drones are still being launched every single day. Yeah, the numbers are lower, for sure, but the attacks have not stopped. And that really shows you the gap between destroying a factory and destroying the will to keep fighting.
Okay, now let's pivot from the air war to a critical economic battlefront. We're talking about the fight for control over one of the most important shipping lanes in the entire world, the Strait of Hormuz. And the economic impact here is just breathtaking. The UN reports that maritime traffic through the strait has dropped by 97%. It's basically a blockade. And that is sending massive shockwaves through the global economy. I mean, it's affecting everything from the price you pay for gas to whether or not you can get certain products on the shelf.
But check this out. Iran isn't just shutting the whole thing down. They're playing this very strategic game they're calling selective passage. So as you can see, ships from places like India or Turkey, they get let through while others are targeted. It's a really calculated move, right? They're trying to put maximum economic pain on their enemies' allies while being careful not to give the rest of the world a reason to jump into the fight against them. And what's the US response to all this? Well, they're trying to make it a global problem. President Trump has publicly called on major world powers, China, France, the UK, Japan, to send their own warships into the region. It's a really high-stakes gamble to try and build a coalition, share the burden. But it also runs the massive risk of dragging even more countries directly into the war. A conflict like this was never going to stay neatly inside Iran's borders. So let's zoom out a bit and look at how this war is now spilling over, pulling in Iran's regional proxies and all of its neighbors. First up, Iran's most powerful ally, Hezbollah, has now jumped into the fight with both feet. And the intensity is just incredible. We're talking about them claiming 25 separate attacks in a single day. And look, these aren't just crude rockets being lobbed over the border. They're targeting sophisticated military sites, proving that they are a far more capable fighting force than a lot of people gave them credit for. But over in the Persian Gulf, we're seeing a really different story. As this chart shows, the attacks on the UAE have actually dropped off significantly since they peaked. Now, that's not because Iran has stopped trying. They've fired thousands of missiles and drones. The difference here is technology.
advanced air defense systems in the Gulf are proving to be incredibly effective, knocking the vast majority of these threats out of the sky.
And the chaos is just spreading. The U.S. embassy in Baghdad gets hit by a missile. A drone attack in Oman kills 2 civilian workers. The situation is so volatile that even Hamas, an ally of Iran, has publicly asked Tehran to please stop attacking other Arab nations. I mean, when Hamas is telling you to cool it, that tells you just how unpredictable and out of control things have become.
So beyond all the military strategy and the geopolitics, this war has unleashed just a devastating human crisis. And it's triggering huge political instability inside Iran itself. And this is where we see what the ultimate stakes really are.
Behind all these big numbers are millions of individual people with individual stories. This is Merve Pourkaz. She's a 32-year-old hairdresser, and her reason for fleeing her country is just tragically simple and all too common. Bombs started exploding near my home.
And when you look at the numbers together, you really see the story of this cascading crisis. It starts with those 3.2 million people displaced inside Iran, but then that violence forces proxies like Hezbollah to get involved, which then leads to over 800,000 people being displaced in neighboring Lebanon. All the while, the direct fighting has led to an estimated 10,000 casualties among just Iranian security forces. It's a truly devastating human toll that's just spilling across the entire region.
And all of this immense pressure is creating some serious cracks at the very top of the Iranian regime. It's raising a really fundamental question that you have to assume intelligence agencies all over the world are asking right now. Who is actually in charge over there?
Well, get this. The new Supreme Leader, who just took over from his father, he hasn't been seen in public since the war started. Rumors are just swirling that he was wounded, maybe badly, in one of the initial strikes. And this has created a massive power vacuum, to the point where senior clerics are now openly questioning his authority and even calling for a totally new leadership structure. The regime is literally fracturing from the top down.
So, in response to all this chaos, what's left of the regime is trying to put on a brave face. You have Iran's president and other top officials making a big show of appearing at a public rally in Tehran, a pretty defiant gesture, especially when you learn that the sounds of explosions could be heard nearby while they were doing it.
But, a public rally can't hide that internal fracturing, and that fracturing is precisely the point of what's known as regime change. It's the stated goal of U.S. and Israeli leaders, remember? Using military force not just to defeat an army, but to create the exact conditions for its entire government to collapse on itself.
And that leaves us with the central and maybe unanswerable question of this whole conflict. Iran's conventional military is crippled. Its leadership is in complete chaos, but its regional proxies are still fighting hard, and it can still choke the global economy. So if you can win on the traditional battlefield, but you're still facing total chaos on every other front, what does victory in this new kind of war even look like?